It's the weekly 30/30 trading list on the ASX. We're reviewing the top 30 momentum companies over the last quarter, and then also looking at the companies that have had the best momentum improvement this week, what we call the companies on the launchpad. Gary Glover's been through the list of both 30 top stocks, and he's pulled out his favourites to walk us through this morning. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris.
Now, it's been an interesting week on the markets. We've had inflation, employment numbers in the last week or so. The market's brought on to sort of 5-month highs. How are you seeing this sort of update in the market? Are there any changes or broader brush aspects that you can see at a sort of a higher level?
Look, there's in that in the weekly list, so not the sort of quarterly momentum, but the weekly launch pad there. There's a lot of stocks in there that have, look, when I get a haircut, Chris, I ask for a 00. So it's the shortest possible that you can get. In the market, there's a time where there's like, ugly ducklings, or there's just plain ugly. And I reckon when I go through that go through the weekly launch pad, a lot of the stocks that were ugly last year are on that list here this week. Probably like City Chic, McPherson's, Pact Group, even Arden Leisure, maybe not so. Bet Makers, Pain Check, 4DS Memory. There's a lot of stocks that were ugly sharps there last year, and obviously the market's had a pretty good move here, but it feels like some of the ugliest stocks starting to get involved in this rally here now. What does that, to me, what does that tell me about the market?
I'd be guessing it's saying it's late stages. If you've got the worst coming in, kind of.
Yeah, exactly right, Chris. So yeah, we know that obviously when the market takes off initially, it's the large caps are sort of leaders that sort of lead. Then as we get a bit more confident, we start to sort of move down the risk curve, sort of mid caps, and then towards the end of the move, we're looking at sort of small caps. And then the very closer to the end there, we're probably seeing some of the dogs sort of barking here a little bit. So when I looked at this list there, it actually made me think, well, maybe we are closer to a little bit of a peak here than I first thought. So that was the thing that sort of said. So I don't think we're there yet. I think the market can go a little bit further here, but the fact that we're seeing some of yesterday's dogs sort of barking here is telling me to be a little cautious here, maybe a little bit. I'll be wanting to sort of just sell into some of these rallies here, just lighten up a little bit more. So that was the striking thing from the list anyway. But let's go through the quarterly. Or let's go backwards here. Why don't we look at some of those stocks anyway? We'll do the weekly.
Yeah, right. So we can see straight away, what's that? $2.50 on the left-hand side and less than 40 cents on the right-hand side.
That's right. So that's City Chic. Yeah. It's like, it's been in a downtrend for a long time now. I mean, that's just the daily chart. I'll put the weekly on there. It's probably a lot more uglier there as well. So look at that. So that's really, really, really coming around. So look, these things move here. I'm not saying they not to trade them here, but there's can get some decent percentage size moves in there in some of these stocks. Just knows probably not going to be, big moves, I think, anyway. So I think you'll see, they can go back and oftentimes, so like Elliott Wave sort of structure there, maybe go back and retest these highs there. So if I look at that sort of structure there, I'll be looking at this high here, probably 57, maybe that high there, 79, which is still a pretty high percentage move. These things sort of can, could trade up to there. Just got to be careful with these ones. You got to manage them pretty tightly. But we know that because I've been training down so long and so long drawn out, what happens there, Chris, is liquidity dries up as well. So seeing the volume's pretty light through that period there. So moves it can move. It can move sort of through there, but still going to find there'll be so many so many losers here over the last 2 years who have bought this stock at a much higher price. Any rally is going to draw sellers in there. So any little pop there just going to draw some people who haven't taken their loss and we'll try and trim some into any sort of bounce at all, because that's sort of I spent the last 2 years in a downtrend. So that's the same thing to be mindful of some of those some of these stocks here that will have come off here. MCP is another one here. Had a nice little move here. Look, it's more interesting there. Probably a bit more volume sort of down near the low there, sort of exhaustion there. Had a bit of a higher low set up there, and a bit of a pop on volume there. So it's maybe slightly more constructive there, but still probably coming off a really, really big downtrend as well. SHM was probably the only one I saw in that list there. I thought there's a pretty big pop there on some decent volume. Thought that was pretty interesting. And yeah, I mean that's a fairly long sort of standing, like a corrective decline as well. There's sort of kind of like a VCP in there in some regard, all sitting in negative there. I know sort of Weinstein will want to sort of see a break of the 30-week moving average or something like that. But yeah, this has sort of broken up here, so probably one to put on a list here now, just because it has sort of popped there out of a big corrective decline there and popped on pretty decent volume.
So that volume and that movement, is that kind of a change of character signal for you, breaking a B-wave swing high as well?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I do love to sort of see those sort of corrective declines or that really tight sort of square pattern as well. So if you look at that on the weekly there, I know it's had a pretty healthy correction there, but this has been pretty tight in here. The whole thing's just sort of tightened up and then sort of popped there. You saw something like, remember ABC had that little tight formation and then popped, and then just definitely sort of kept running there. So that was pretty interesting actually. Just the volume is what's striking there, and the fact that it is in a long sort of standing corrective phase. So thought that is pretty interesting. Thought the couple of the coal stocks there have sort of started to rally here the last week or two, which I thought was interesting. The only issue you've got there is you're still on a downtrend. We still haven't broken a swing high yet. So we sort of need to sort of see. So we did see a bit of volume here, which is the plus. Maybe some okay volume here as well. So this is sort of, you kind of want to see this congestion dry up a little bit here. But we still haven't broken the downtrend yet. So we're still in this sort of corrective decline period yet. So it's a watch for me. I really want to sort of see, I want to see, a new high at least, or, just something a bit more positive. They can stay like this for a while, Chris. They can sort of make sort of lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. It can drag on for a while, and you can kind of get caught trying to buy these things, way early, and then you can be stuck in them for months longer than you want to. And it just means your money's sort of sitting there doing nothing all the time. They're going sideways. So we don't want to be sort of working. We don't want our money sort of sitting there doing nothing. We want to be working. So, but interesting anyway. The coal stocks there, you sort of want to be watching those anyway, just for possible change in character in the future there. But nothing there. ALG was sort of one that I thought was okay here. Has broken above the 50 here. Volumes are sort of modest. Here's a stock that sort of can run from time to time there. That's the leisure group. So had a pretty tough sort of few years, you'd say. So that's actually had a nice recovery here, I guess. So yeah, just had a pretty big correction there, probably a bit larger than, if you look at all that move there, all the corrections are pretty small in there. That's sort of more sideways there. Now this is the largest correction of that whole entire trend there. So just puts the trend at risk there. So they can bounce back here. Oftentimes I'll make a sort of first lower high there, but that's how sort of that's like how your trend overbalance, how the sort of bearish phases sort of start. So I'll probably leave that one there. I thought RLT looked quite good. So this is sort of just seeing a bit of volume. Sort of through here, bit of volume on this rally again. We're starting to see a bit of volume again. So we do have the hallmarks there of of a low here. First high low, second high low, third high low. So basically got a 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern here, Chris, which I think sort of interesting. We have sort of did break above sort of this minor swing high in here, and now we're sort of stabilizing as well in here. So the price is sort of congesting. So did see like potential VCP in there, but I think it might have just
Failed in July, did it?
just hit that level there. I don't know if it actually my camera thing here over top there, but what was that, 184.5, and I think this was 185. There's a half a cent there, so you might have got excited about that, but then it failed straight away, which we would have got stopped out, something like that. But yeah, still might have a bit of a basing there.
So just that 0, 1, 2, 3 possibility, how important is it to you that it's sitting around the 50-day moving average, which was the red line?
Yeah, I like to set it above there. Up there. So I just looked at the sort of weekly there. It's obviously had a fairly decent downtrend there. Just sort of, just a bit of a building phase going on in. So definitely sort of watching that one at the moment there. You'd probably like to see it a bit more there, but so just that sort of, when I see sort of volumes, some increase in volumes down here, that is sort of interesting. Just, yeah. Stubborn, I guess it's, like probably requires a bit more work here, but
add it to the watch list, see how it pans out. Maybe a bit more consolidation in a week or two. It could be sitting on the 50-day.
Yeah, it depends how you trade it. I'd probably do some homework on the company, have a look at what they do, look at some of recent reports there. I'd love to, if the price sort of came back in closer to this level here, it might entice me for a little trade there, just because I don't know too much about it here. It's still early here, but I do like the signs there and these sort of basing. So we could start with what they call like a little pilot buy. So you could buy something sort of small in here with a very tight stop. So if you're wrong, you're taking a tiny loss. That's sort of how I'd like to start. And if it starts to sort of build here, we can always add those positions there. I think, like Kogan was on the list here, and the quarterly there, and this has been running for a while here, but this did build the same way, because it actually sort of had a few high lows sort of building, and then it built slowly. So everyone thinks they have to sort of nail the low. You don't have to nail the low. You just have to be on the right move here. So doesn't matter if you come in a little bit late there. It's obviously nice from risk reward point of view. But yeah, for minutes, I was listening to John Boyd, who wrote Monster Stocks this morning, podcasting, talking about Davis, and even Davis, who did he used to do pilot buys. He used to basically sort of start small, and he gets stopped out of plenty of stocks there, but it's the stocks that were sort of moving upwards. He'd be adding to those. So he was, he was sort of almost more aggressive than me in some manners, in that he would just keep adding to his winners. And any ones, and all the losers he'd be sort of stopped out. So he'd sort of start with small buys and just about keep adding to the position there. So basically, if he's on the right stock that's heading up there, he'd build a big position there and then plan up there. That's sort of usually only sort of 2 or 3 big rides every year. If you get on them and stay with them, they're the ones that sort of they kind of made each year. So just interesting sort of thing about that. So, but that's right. Oftentimes it's sort of smart to sort of start small here, I think, with some of those trades. BLG I thought was interesting here. Just had I get almost like a little tiny VCP, and then we sort of had this pullback, bit overlapping, bit corrective there. Now we're sort of starting to break, we've now sort of break to a new high here, so a bit possible change of character. Not incredible volumes there, Chris, so did have some good volume through here, but saying that, there wasn't a ton of selling either. Pretty light, so pretty light through here. So just a little small for me, but not the worst looking chart there, Blue Gas. On that list there, I mean, you've got, I mentioned, Red Bubble, which is a massive decline there. I mean, that's just the daily here. The weekly as well. So, massive declines there. So just going to face a wave of unhappy buyers here. They'll be looking to get out on any rally here. So yeah, you can have, the liquidity might drop here, you might get a little pop here, but just, we talked about the buy now, pay later after that, massive trend of run and big correction there. You've seen all the rallies there being pretty small for those. They just don't follow through just because there's so many sort of bag holders, people holding the sort of stock at high levels. So they're looking to get out, selling rally there, just sort of stops them. That's the reason why, these leaders lead and they keep going is that, once we have new highs, there's no sellers there. No one's actually bought them, sort of at high prices. So, that sort of fuels the sort of enthusiasm for these stocks as they keep going, and that often causes them to maybe over rally there. But that's what you're looking for. You're looking for these, all these biggest movers there. They move big and then they decline big. But the key there is just to go with them when they're running big here. So I thought BlueScope looked pretty interesting there. Bit of a VCP in there, Chris. So got a first pullback, second a bit tighter there. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Grain Corp there. See the sort of Grain Corp had this sort of pullback to the 50, had a bounce, pullback to the 50, had a bounce there. So there's a few larger stocks actually making that sort of setup there. So there's a few medium-sized laggards there, that still look pretty good. So IFL. It was interesting for a couple of reasons there. False break on the bottom. So it did go near low, some big volume sort of down near this false break. We've got a bit of a bounce there, bit of a pullback. So we've got a first higher low here, and then we've got a bit of a impulsive bounce here. So I've had a bit of a sort of stronger follow through there. So yeah, interesting sort of where, just obviously sort of come back to that, that previous sort of low there. Didn't quite get there. Little false break here on this last one though. But yeah, this is pretty interesting actually. So I think it's one stock to sort of keep an eye on. Now,
So as you're looking through those charts, it's reminding me of when we were at the top of the market and you were forecasting a pullback, which you called rightfully so and were pretty accurate with the timings on it. One statistic, and I'll see if I can remember it correctly, you were saying that in a bear market, in a bad bear market, you can see 80% of stocks fall 50% and 50% of stocks fall 80%. And some of those charts that you're showing us on the weekly where they've fallen dramatically, some of them have fallen more than 80%.
That's no, you're right, man. The stocks on that list, they're the stocks that have declined more than 80%. Like a lot of them have massive declines. So it is interesting that they're actually sort of rallying here. So I'm not saying it's the end of this bull run here. I don't think it is yet. But it does suggest that maybe we've had a pretty strong rally here. I sort of said this all along here that second half of this 23, like the second half of I think the last 60 years of the third years, we haven't seen in the US market there, just haven't seen any declines larger than 5%. They all sort of fall into the sort of 2 to 5% sort of pullback. So just might get a pullback here. If I went back and looked at that 2017 sort of trend there, that went to a new high, pulled back about 3%, went up, made a slight or new high again. Then it pulled back about 7%. So actually had some larger, that was our index. So yeah, just interesting here. We've sort of got a similar sort of setup on the market there with, we're roaring ahead here. I think we need to sort of go and retest the high. When you get this close to it, you don't sort of normally sort of stop it without sort of getting in closer to the old high there. So I think we've got to go a little bit higher here. But yeah, it's just interesting. Some of those stocks are on that list there. It's just telling us to make sure we I guess we should be tightening up our stops on some of our positions that have been running. We don't want to sort of run what profits there.
So certainly going through the weekly list and on the launch pad, and
yes.
Are we moving to the quarterly momentum now?
Yeah, so the quarterly momentum there's a couple of interesting stocks in there as well. The AW1 there, this is sort of one that we actually did mention last week there, talking about how the pullback there had been, no volume in the pullback. So, first little bit of an inside day there, some volume came in, again, small pullbacks there, volume's still pretty tight again. So, no, it's looking a little extended here, but so far nothing looks too negative there with AW1. So I was along that stock there, I'd be just sort of staying with it there. Nothing sort of too negative there yet. WC8 probably sort of something that looks pretty similar to that AW1, maybe a little bit more advanced. So you'd have a few pullbacks, nice and small, not much volume there, sort of pop again, pull back a light volume, sort of pop again. So even now the last 2 days, not no volume again on that WC8. So it's pretty interesting there. One trade that did make the list there was Nuix, NXL, which has been a bit of a dog to some degree. Though it has had a decent rally here this year, and then pull back again. This is a bit of a trading opportunity there for sort of one of those. Anyone who's read Ivan Hoff, he talks about sort of if a sort of stock gaps up on sort of good views, and I know a few traders have sort of reached out to said, how do you trade these sort of if you get a sort of fundamental news and the stock gaps up, oftentimes you sort of you put an order in and you miss the open and then it keeps running, and then how do you have the conviction to sort of go with it? The key there is it has to be substantial. It has to be sort of game-changing sort of news. So it has to sort of almost really catch the market unaware and it just has to be a bit of has to be a large change in the stock there. So we saw it with sort of MP1 earlier in the year. It sort of had a couple of downgrades there. All of a sudden it had some good news, and UCO had got things going really early, sort of gapped up and had a little fade there. But we sort of know these things will often run there. So that Nuix there is obviously, everyone positioned pretty poorly, pretty negatively, and we've had a pretty good jump there. We've been hard to sort of follow that type of move, but it has sort of kicked on there. So sometimes those sort of trades there, I think Ivan Hoff there, he'll look at maybe the open or something there, maybe usually like a 2 or 3% stop or something there, or some guys even use the open, and then if it trades one tick down, they're out. But I think you need to give yourself a little bit of room there sometimes. But sometimes they're reasonable trading opportunities there, and people are asking too, Chris, about how to put your orders in with those sort of stocks as well. So the key there is, you sort of put your, oftentimes you sort of see this thing, I want to buy the gap up here, but you still got to have a limit there on what you think would be crazy. So, if the stock opened at 150 or 140, you think, that's a big gap. I may not want to pay that, So when you do sort of buy these gap ups there, you sort of got to make a bit of a judgment call on what you think is reasonable, and you've got to put your limit as well in there. And if it gaps above your limit, what you think is, what you think is doable, then you just got to let it go as well. So, but if you want to get set there, you've got to be, you've got a bit high, sort of hard to go with it. But you've got to have your finger on the pulse too in terms of sort of being stopped out. Because if it sort of comes straight back, you want to be like that sort of gap up there. I wouldn't be allowing any more than like a 2 or 3% stop there. You want to be really, really sort of tight with someone can come all the way back.
Well, as you're mentioning the gap ups, reminds me of two sets of well-known traders that have put a lot of research into this. And first one's Gil Morales and Chris Cart show what they call the Bible gap up. And for them, what stuck with me was the critical signature was in the volume. If it was looking like it was going to print more than 150% of the average daily volume, which that gap up there to the right clearly shows.
Yeah,
you can tell early. And they've got a whole lot of rules that they put in around that, stock management and the like. And to a different setup, Larry Williams, well-known trader, and he was on the indices. He was what he called the whoops trade, and it was sort of fading gap ups. Now it's quite a different one, but he went through a lot of different parameters, and they're really good reads to look at and pull apart and dissect the trade. Like you're saying, how far do I have it? How close do I set my stop? They're all bridges that those authors have crossed before, and they sort of go through in detail what did and what didn't work. So
the volume's a big one, Chris. Yeah, that is sort of the look, if you're sort of seeing big volume sort of pretty early, some decent sort of size buying there, and you can do the math pretty quickly. So within the first half hour, if you're already at half, or you're already at the average daily volume, you're going to have big volume day. So you can do the sort of sums. Even the first hour there, sort of not rocket science there. It should be pretty obvious that you've got sort of seeing some swimming volume there.
Good point. You can tell that really fairly early on.
Yeah. So AZS was another one on the list. I think this one was sort of come up previously there. Just goes to show sometimes these things can sort of gap up and just keep running here. Just sort of keep flowing through. What have we got there? Sort of, one of the reasons I wouldn't trade this one here, Chris, spread bubble, from the fact that it's obviously one of the ugly stocks and a lot of sells in front of it there. You can see here that there's been no volume on the move here so far. So very, very light volume. So the only volume that's come in was yesterday on that sort of big,
So there's not a lot of buyers behind that move.
No, it hasn't moved much here. So all of a sudden this has finally sort of got going here, and then you probably, this has probably met some selling resistance. There's some like, guys here, who were sort of like, held the stock for 2 years and thought, okay, I'll get to about 50 cents, I'll get 60 cents, I'll rallies 30%, I'm out. I'll take my loss and move on here. They've held on. There's going to be so many of those because it's really such a long, drawn-out move there. So you're just going to see that that's the problem with these stocks that are really so far underwater. There's so many losers in there that are just that are wanting to get out, and just someone will be holding on for, I hope, higher prices there. Obviously, that never comes, as we know, for most of the stocks. But some of them will only get small moves there. So that's why I wouldn't trade RBL there. I think there's no volume behind that move there. The only volume you're seeing there is after it's sort of rallied there. ENR, I thought was interesting there. I thought we sort of looked at this one previously, actually. I think it's sort of one that sort of came up the last couple of weeks there. So I sort of, I think we sort of talked about this pullback there. Chris might have come back a bit more, maybe came back a little bit higher there, but never saw any volume come through there. So we saw that one little day of volume there, pullback. Again, we talked about how the volume just dries up to almost nothingness. And those are often, those are days when you sort of often see the lows there, when you see almost those sort of nothing volume days. So, look, did sort of see some selling there one day here. So it's probably getting a little extended here. Just got to watch that one there now. But when you see that,
see if there's follow through volume, more down days with big volume. Is that kind of?
Yeah. I mean, when these things run here and pull back, they'll sort of go again, then they'll pull back a lot again. That's probably oftentimes, either your first consolidation or your second consolidation is probably your safest time to buy those things. Once they sort of start getting to maybe 3 or 4 consolidations there, if we look at the stocks that we're looking at here, some of them have got maybe sort of 4 drives there. Not a lot of them have more than that. So, I think sort of once you're sort of into maybe your 3rd or 4th sort of peak there, you're taking a bit more risk.
I think, the studies that we've done looking at those kind of rallies, exactly that. Like you said with Davis, he might have got 3 or 4 sort of big wins throughout the year with those 3rd, 4th, and 5th drives. But after the 3rd drive, if we're on this chart for Encounter, if we're including from April through May as the first one, after they get into that 3rd drive, statistically, they're unlikely to put on that same kind of length again. And if they do, it's normally short-lived.
Yeah. What you might, some of the stronger stocks, what they'll do is they'll go through a big pause. Some might just go sideways for a decent period of time. So something like, November, December there, sort of, maybe that January, February, but don't have the deeper decline like March. So basically sort of stay high and tight in the zone there. So you might stay there for a month or 2 and then go again, but they don't. That's probably minority sort of setup rather than already there.
I think I think lithium stocks did that. They went sideways for about 4 to 6 months, and then they went on for their second drive. But most of them sort of held there, like you were describing.
Yeah.
That's in the last 3 years or so. Next up, PLY, is it?
Yeah, that's what you want to see. You want to see those sort of big sideways sort of moves there. Kind of consolidation patterns there. So I think that RLT that we showed there, that's had a decent sort of sideways move there, I think. And that PAC was the other one too on that list. I think I might have missed that one. That's the one actually that sort of had this big sideways move there. So if you look at that sort of weekly sort of setup there, see how they sort of go sideways there and then they sort of pop there. This is a big VCP in here. Didn't give you much of a chance to sort of get set on there, but the whole thing did sort of tighten up there. So you are looking for those sort of those sort of more sideways orientated consolidations there. You know, if you're seeing a stock go sideways in a tight band here, you start to have a really close look at it. DUG is sort of one that's been on the list for a while here now. It's just still motoring here. I mean, there's those classic sort of congestion patterns there. You know,
this is standing out. Your
impulsive, corrective, impulsive, corrective, impulsive, corrective. It's not, you know, you're just basically seeing that sort of sideways action there.
And then what about the moving averages?
Yeah, sitting above there. I mean, I was just John Boyd this morning was talking about, you know, even Jarvis, and I was talking about a couple of the other greats as well before, like Gerald Lowe and Elliot there, and they want to see that tightening price action. So even sort of suggesting that, you know, that the price action tightening is more important than the volume drying out. They just want to see the tight action. So if they sort of see that, you know, stocks that have got relative strength and strong, and then that tight sideways action, that's what they like to sort of see. So, yeah. Well, this stock looked pretty interesting here to me, Chris. Saturday Mines, XAM. I know we've had a bit of a rally in here, had a nice little VCP sort of set up in here. Little pullback there, yeah. Second pullback a bit tighter, then broke through and had a really, really nice run here. But pretty good volume into that high there. Just saw a little bit of selling off the high there. Pullback here, but had a small bounce. Pullback again on very light volume here. So the sellers definitely dried up here. Buyers have sort of got a bit more aggressive off this last low there. So not pretty healthy volume actually through there. And then pulling back again on pretty light volume again. So I thought, okay, this is sort of, although it looks like it's moved quite a bit here, this is holding it pretty well. So sort of one that I sort of wrote down as looked pretty positive there. Definitely one had a closer look at that company there. Next one was IMR, and just maybe a little bit of a VCP in here, Chris, but still not nice liquid stock trade there. But when I looked at the weekly, I thought, oh, that's interesting. It was sort of like had good volume off the first drive, good volume off the second drive here. Price action stayed pretty tight. Just starting to sort of come out of this sort of, so still staying below the held low here, but I do love to see these sort of big volume bars here. That's like we look at the VCPs in the past, now the daily. First drive, big volume. Second drive, big volume. Tight price action there, and then it drives through. So this is definitely another one to keep an eye on as well. So I thought that would really well. So the IMI. So a few stocks in there, a little bit choppy, this stock. But yeah, just some interesting ones there, sort of across the board there. MP1, I mean, it's funny how, these leaders, Chris, we sort of talked about, 360 as well. We just sort of seen them, they sort of, they'll run, they'll have a bit of a cool off there, whether they peter back into the 10 or the 20 day, whatever their sort of go is. I looked at MP1 there, it's probably not as, the 360 loves the 20. Big things like Elbers and stuff there love the 10. This one was a bit messier here, just sort of its history is sort of coming back in between there. So I know it sort of hit the 10 and 20 in here, did break the 10 and 20 in here, came in between the 10 and 20 in here. So but you're seeing there, you've seen this thing sort of rally here. And again, the volume dries up here. Again, the volume sort of dried up in here, a little bit of selling in there. But, it just comes straight back again. So just want to see those impulsive moves, the volume dry up, and the volume start to sort of come back in again. So that's why it's never too late to be looking at some of these leaders. Just got to, most of us make the mistake of thinking, we've missed it, it's already gone. And they'll just continue to keep running, So even this WA1 there, that stayed pretty tight as well after a nice sort of move here. This is probably that thing I talked about earlier about having a bit of a cool off, having a sideways, having a breather. That's the type of thing the stronger stocks will do here, is have this little tight sideways moving in. There's a VCP in there too, Chris, as well. So, that's what I mean. The stronger stocks here, pull back here, pull back here, pull back here. So there's your little, there's your little VCP in there. So you're just looking for a little B-wave break above this level here. So it might have got a bit of a false start on this day here. But if you need to stop under your 10 or 20 there, you wouldn't have been broken there, even a stop just below maybe the couple of days earlier. And this thing sort of kept going here. I made the mistake. I traded this one after this breather, Chris. Had a nice little consolidation here, pretty light volume, little VCP in there. Had a bit of a breakout there. Did sort of come back, did get going. Then it went to a new high there, and it just there was a little bit of selling there, but it just didn't. I was thinking, this market looked a bit late sort of stage there, so I ended up sort of trimming my position into this, concern that it might be a little false break in here. But all it did was sort of congest and keep going. Now, even if I got out, which I did, I took it off my radar. Whereas the reality was, look how tight that price is. And that's David Ryan for the 101 there. Just under the high.
What you're describing right there is the fourth day of that consolidation I actually bought.
You bought this one?
Yeah, probably the day you sold, right? But this one. That was, it did. I was thinking of you in the setup. I was thinking, that's David Ryan, congestion under the high. But I went through and what tipped me over the edge was looking at all of the peers. So I looked at the whole, all of the other companies in the same thematic and saw their consolidation and their setup, and that gave me the confidence of holding through the false break. But the stop, as you can imagine, you'd probably look at that and find my stop straight away. It was
just not the most liquid stock to trade too. It's so I like to get a lot of size on. So I sort of find it hard to get these sort of stocks on. I sort of found that I'm a better trader if I've got fewer positions on that than having too many. So I think I only had like 10%, and that was, I felt slightly uncomfortable with 10%. Whereas I've got 20% on two stocks, and I'm totally comfortable with those. But this goes to show you just got to keep an eye on those leaders here, the stronger stocks here, because they just have these little pauses all the time and then continue on. So there's a reason why some of the best traders on the planet, they just trade the stronger stocks. So I think they look at Market Smith there, they look at stocks that are relative strength there. When Kalamaggi's 98 above, I think Shulman Abini's probably 97, 95 and above. And all those guys are just looking at the strongest stocks on the board here. Lot to be said for just sort of sticking with the top there. So just be careful of sort of playing around at the bottom end of the market. That's probably the more difficult end. But definitely a very interesting list this week, Chris. So,
yeah, well, it's good to see an interesting list, and from sort of two ends, as you were saying, we're getting a lot of the yesterday's heroes, the ones that have fallen 80, 90% more, showing up in the launch pad as having momentum change. But I think you rightfully pointed out they're coming from very low bases. But as we're looking at these momentum leaders for the quarterly, there's some really strong names in there. So that's a good two ends of the market showing up in this week's list. So are there any other insights to share for the week, Gary, or it's a good breakdown of two different sides of the market?
Yeah, I didn't sort of bring any quote actually this week, so I'll just go to a classic old one there. The uncommon man picks right and sits tight.
Picks right and sits tight.
Yeah.
That's a good quote to leave on. Thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.
Gary's mentioned all of those leading companies in the second half here, these momentum leaders. We covered it on the daily podcast. We'll put a link down there in the bottom. He's also mentioned 0, 1, 2, 3 bottom, BCPs, and a couple of other setups like false breaks. There's a whole playlist on the right-hand side where Gary's been through previous interviews and we've pulled them out and he's broken down those thematics, those indicators, those setups in more detail. That's on the right-hand side. On the left is Gary's Twitter handle.